What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Patriots Pulse podcast. I'm here with Andrew once again. We're ready to talk trade deadline. We've had some news going on with the Patriots and regarding an actual trade. But before we get into it, Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling good after that win against the Jets. It's nothing's better than beating the Jets and ruining the Jets season. It's always
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, for
How are
like
you doing?
without a doubt. I'm doing good too. I mean, like you said, that Jets win felt good. Um, it's usually as crazy as it might sound for those of if any of the viewers are in my dynasty league for fantasy. It's pretty rare for me to have the Patriots win and a fantasy win. It's either one or the other. So Sunday was one of those weeks that I luckily got both. So yeah, I've been doing pretty good. I know they have, I don't want to say an easy matchup, but one of the easier matchups on their schedule coming up this Sunday. So we're not going to go too deep into that. We're here to talk trades. We want to dissect and talk about what this team is going to do as far as building for the future.
Yeah, I can't say the same for fantasy. It's more just I watch the Pats lose and I lose, so that's not always fun. But yeah, we definitely got some stuff we can talk about today in regards to the trade deadline. The deadline is November 5th. Is that Tuesday?
It's whatever. I don't know what date Tuesday is in particular, but I know it's next
Okay,
Tuesday.
it's Tuesday, Monday. It's November 5th. That's when the deadline is. But so uh, we did get a big report from Josina Anderson and also a small little one from Albert Breer on NBC Sports Boston. We'll start with Josina's. She said that the Patriots will be or are expected to be in the market for a defensive tackle, offensive tackle, and wide receiver, just kind of looking to see who might be available, who may not be available. So, Carlos, I want to ask you, what do you really make of that report? And what do you think we can really expect from New England at the deadline, given that news?
If I'm being completely honest, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but the report doesn't do much for me. It didn't move me much just because she named like three positions of need. And I'm not saying she was like reporting like a lie. I'm just saying like I'm not shocked that they're in the market for that. I know a lot more people were just surprised that they could be buyers at the trade deadline. I do understand like the shock, I guess you could say, in regard to that, but the report itself, yeah, I'm not surprised that they are looking for depth. The one thing I will say is that I kind of just said it right there. I slipped up. Um, I expect it to be for depth. I don't want. I hope. I mean, maybe I'm completely wrong, but my expectation is that people shouldn't get their hopes up just thinking that like, oh, they're in the market for these positions, or we're going to get the person at the top of the trade market. I'm expecting them more so to trade for either young guys that are unproven or just depth pieces. That's where my mind's at. So when people say like, oh, why are they going to be buyers? I think they're going to be buyers for the future. It's not going to be for a star player that's just going to come in and change everything day one. So I think people need to understand that it's not going to be like a Deontay Johnson who was just traded the other day. Like it's not going to be somebody that's on a 1 year deal looking to win. I expect it to be depth guys.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I think some people expect them to make like a big splash move for like T Higgins, for an example. I wouldn't expect that just yet. I mean, I agree with you in the sense that it's going to be more depth guys. Maybe they get just a veteran for a late round pick to hold them over on like the defensive front or something. But also, they're going to look at some guys who may be on expiring rookie deals or are on multi-year deals who they can utilize in the future and who will be a part of the future. And this kind of segues, I think they'll be both buyers and sellers. And that kind of segues into Albert Breer's report that the Patriots have been fielding calls for two wide receivers currently on the roster, KJ Osborne and Tyquan Thornton. I can't imagine they'd get too much out of them. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Taekwon's speed puts him over Osborne, and just you can't teach that speed. It's special, but the thing with Osborne is he's a good veteran to have in the locker room. He's got some experience, so maybe a team like the Buccaneers could use him. But I mean, I think they'll kind of be shopping around some vets and guys like Thornton. We'll see if a deal gets done there, but really just in terms of buying, I don't think they're going to be super active. It's more just, oh, if this guy's available, why not just send a little offer and see what happens?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. In terms of the two receivers that they're fielding calls for, one, no one should be surprised, and I'm pretty sure everybody expected that. Two, I, I personally think that Osborne's going to be the one that's more likely to, I guess you would say, draw interest compared to Thornton. I get what you're saying about the speed. Like, I'm not saying you're wrong at all. I just think that Osborne's proven it in the league, so like teams know what they're trading for in a sense. Um, I threw out the idea the other day of him getting traded to the Jaguars. I thought that was like a really likely landing spot, but a lot of people disagreed with me, which I'm surprised. Which I don't mind, but I personally just think that like a team like that just lost one of their wide receivers for the season. They have a rookie that's their number one guy, but he just got injured. Um, I don't see why they wouldn't trade for a veteran that's on a 1 year deal, that's on a cheap 1 year deal that could produce and has produced. That was my logic behind it. So I wouldn't be surprised if he got traded to a team like that. Um, the Niners comes to mind too. People have always been like they've only been connecting Kendrick Bourne to the Niners, but one, Kendrick Bourne's not getting traded. There's like
Yeah.
if he got traded, that would be one that I'm genuinely like shocked by. But
Him and
it,
honestly, kind of not to cut you off, but him and
you're,
Godshow, I can't see
yeah,
them getting rid of
yeah.
God.
Yeah, I think the Godshaw report was more so it wasn't even a report. I think it was just like people, someone throwing out I forgot who it was. One of
I
one of
didn't
the
see like an
reporters
actual report on him.
someone named him. They said Kendrick Bourne and Devon Godshaw are two veterans that come to mind. It was something like along I'm paraphrasing, but it wasn't that they're fielding calls for those two veterans. They just said like those are two veterans that could be potential options for other teams or that teams have inquired about. So those two guys, I don't think they're going anywhere. There's no way like there's no reason why they should trade them. And I like we've been talking about. Like I just think someone like KJ Osborne, who's on a 1 year deal, like a cheap veteran that a team could go trade for, go get a 6 round pick for him. I know people might be like, oh, like he wouldn't even get a 6 round pick. But I genuinely think a sixth is fine. Like why not trade
Mhm.
away a guy that clearly doesn't want to be here too? I know he's like a cool, really cool guy and everything, but he's made it pretty well known that, or he's subtly made it known that he doesn't want to be here. Um, but yeah, I just yeah, it's just gonna be like one of those light little trades for someone like KJ Osborne, Taekwon Thornton, if they were to trade away somebody. And not to drag this on, but like someone else that I would be shocked if they traded because I don't expect them to trade them at all is Jonathan Jones.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have been saying like, oh, like I saw the a tweet today that was like, oh, Jonathan Jones and a fourth for Jordan Addison. We're not getting Jordan Addison. I'm sorry to break it to you. I'd be shocked that that one would genuinely surprise me because, like I said at the beginning, they're not. I don't expect them to trade for big name players or people that or guys that are going to one cost a good amount and two just be like a big name brought into the organization. I don't expect that at all. The Patriots are going to be sellers before anything else. So I just want to put that out there. And they need the veteran leadership amongst Devon Godshaw, Kendrick Bourne, and Jonathan Jones.
Kendrick Bourne, he's too much of he has such a significant locker room presence, and he just like you could see when he came back. There's just so much energy
Yeah,
out of him that just it it I don't know, it just helps uplift everyone and the team
yeah.
morale. Like just having a guy like that, like that's awesome. He's also been really helpful in terms of uplifting other guys in the receiver room. For Godchow, they've been really rough in terms of their run defense throughout the entirety of the season, and I really don't get how trading away one of your really only good run defenders
Hmm.
really helps you in that sense.
Hmm.
So it's hard to see them really moving off of him, especially since they just extended him. Um,
Yeah.
and then who else were you talking about? Oh yeah, Jonathan
Jonathan Jones.
Jones, kind of similar to the run defense. We saw what happened. I mean, there's only so much Marcus Jones can do against Garrett Wilson, just from a size standpoint. But we saw when you go up against a team with two star wide receivers like the Jets have, and you have Christian Gonzalez shadowing Devontae Adams the entire game, the other guy is gonna produce,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
it's going to be really hard to stop him. And we saw that. So I really don't see how depleting their cornerback room really helps again. Um,
Mhm.
but what was I gonna say? There was something about, oh yeah, Jordan Addison. I don't know. I don't think that's gonna happen. I just don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, and a lot of people are basing the idea that he might get traded just off of his Instagram post saying free three. Like I don't think that means much. He's barely a year and a half into the league. I don't think he's going to force his way out of the first team that drafted him. But not to harp on the veterans so much that we're talking about, those three in particular, Gottschall, Bourne, and Jones, those three rooms, those three units don't have many veterans. And I don't see the logic in an organization that's already struggling. No, I don't, yeah, honestly, yes, struggling with new leadership. I don't see why it's smart to trade away veteran leadership that knows what they're doing in a sense. That doesn't do anything for the team. That just hurts them. Who broke down the locker room after the win? It was Jonathan Jones. Like he broke the huddle down. So it's like they need those guys in the building. There's no reason to let them go. I think some people like KJ Osborne, Tyquan Thornton, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it's like a lower bottom of the roster guy that's traded. Addition. I'm trying to think. I had one in mind, but now I'm blanking on it.
I really don't see a lot of other options outside from the receiver room because like
Yeah,
that's a really crowded room in the first place, and I think someone has to go just
yeah.
for to give other guys opportunities like Javon Baker. Um, but like they have what 7 active on the roster right now. That's and they only act like consistently play 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
It's like at that point, just give Osborne another opportunity, like you gave Uche another opportunity. Also, one thing I want to say about the Uche trade because I
And let's
you
talk
reminded
about that.
me
Yeah.
of yeah you reminded me of how people thought we were gonna get more, but when you were talking about Osborne maybe getting traded for a six, that reminded me of the Uche
Mhm.
trade. They weren't gonna get much else from him, obviously, or for him. Obviously, you wish it would have been like a 2025 sixth, but
Yeah.
like he hadn't really produced much at all this season. He's been on a constant just downward slope since the 2022 season, and also playing out opposite of Matthew Judon also gives you more opportunities to get back there and get pressure on the quarterback and sack him and cause chaos. But I mean, he's kind of been like a non-factor this year,
Yeah.
almost. So they really weren't going to get much for him. I just wanted to add that because I know some
Yeah.
people were like, how did we only get a 2026 six rounder for him? He's so much better than that. I mean, I just wanted to add that.
Before I give my thoughts on that, I don't know if you want to pull up Keegan's comment saying that we really need receivers and who's available. Listen, I'm sorry to break it to you, but they just spent a lot of draft capital on wide receivers. And although Polk and Baker aren't producing right now, there's no reason for them to keep adding, like, whether it's like young guys that are unproven or just middle, like wide receiver two, wide receiver threes. There's no reason for them to add somebody like that. The only reason they would add a wide receiver, in my opinion, is if it's a star. If it's someone that's going to be a difference maker day one, they're going to come in and be the wide receiver one. So someone like T. Higgins comes to mind. I don't see him getting traded. I see him becoming a free agent or getting traded off of a franchise tag more than anything um, in the offseason. Um, but I don't see any wide receiver ones available on the trade market. Therefore, I don't think the Patriots are going to trade for any wide receivers. I think the fact that they put a lot of draft capital into two guys and they signed Bourne to an extension, and then they have Pop Douglas, who's been obviously a factor in the receiving group. So I don't see why they should add another guy unless it's a number one. So I'd be surprised if they even looked into trading for a wide receiver unless it's a number one. But really quick, just to give my thoughts on the Josh Uche trade, I totally agree with you. I don't know why people expect, like, I remember when I put him out as a trade candidate before anything ever happened. People were saying like, yeah, like we'll get a fourth rounder for him or we'll get a third rounder for him. And it's like, you're literally going off of like Madden right now. Like it's not like you're it's not just like a player's name value and like he's produced in the past and he's young, so that means oh you're gonna get a third round pick for him. That's not how it works. He hasn't been producing as of late. He had that one 2022 season where sure he was really like the stats say that he was really good in it, and I enjoyed watching him that season, but he had a lot of production in just like 4 games, and that
Yeah,
was
one game
all
he had
those
four
stats.
sacks
Yeah,
for his
like
11.5. Not
exactly.
not to
So
not to like discredit what he did. He was a great pass rusher in
yeah, yeah.
2022, but since then it hasn't been the same.
Yeah, and honestly, I am interested to see if maybe it was the situation that just wasn't the right fit for him. Like he even mentioned it, saying that he hasn't gotten a lot of opportunities to rush the passer because of the situations that he's put in and the team, like the situation the team's in, playing from behind a lot. Um, Maybe that plays a factor. He hasn't really been able to showcase his true ability. Really cool guy, talented. Obviously, he was a former second round pick, but here with the Patriots, he did not produce. He was when at the start of his career, he was injury prone as well. Like I remember him missing a lot of time, like every once in a while during the season. So a 6 round pick in 2026 is it ideal? No. I like you said, I would prefer a 2025 sixth, but at the end of the day, they weren't going to get a comp pick for him. I know a lot of people have been saying that, like, oh, they're just let him walk in free agency. They're going to outspend the comp pick. So just understand that they wouldn't have gotten a comp pick back for him. So getting a 6 rounder is fine and all. My only gripe with it is that it's to a contender. So that's like almost like a seventh at that point. Um, that's my only gripe. But what are you going to do? Like, I even said, like, I highly doubt they got a better offer and people were kind of being smart asses with me. Like, obviously they didn't. That's my point. Like they took the best offer they thought they could find. So I don't have much anger behind the trade.
I just hate that he went to the Chiefs. Like, why not the Lions? Like, I want to be able to root for him if uh, he goes like deep on a playoff run, but
Yeah,
I'm not going to root for the Chiefs. No, not doing that. But
definitely.
I did want to add a little bit to Keegan's comment.
Mhm.
The plan from when Elliot Wolf and his staff and Gerard Mayo they all took over, it was get these young pieces on offense. They spent 7 picks on offensive guys this year, and it was to play it out this year, reassess, and just assess how Drake May's doing, obviously, and then reassess in the offseason and determine what you need then. They're not gonna they're not gonna get like a significant addition at the receiver position in the middle of the season. You don't typically see the. I mean, it happened this year already with Devontae Adams, but like you don't see these huge mid-season wide receiver deals happen that much. And I agree with you, Carlos, that I don't think they're gonna try and get rid of T Higgins just yet because even if the Bengals do lose, they still have a talented roster that they obviously believe that they can make a playoff push with, and they're gonna try and get there, and that's gonna be so much harder to do it without T Higgins. Same
Yeah.
with like Chris Olave and the Saints. They still Derek Carr it might come back this week. If not, he might come back week 10. They're gonna want to make a push for the
Yeah.
playoffs. I mean, Buccaneers are hurt. They got to probably get through the Falcons, but they still have a genuine shot.
Yeah.
But like, it's just I don't know that if they're gonna make a significant upgrade, it's gonna be in the offseason. That's really what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And people also have to keep in mind that in the offseason is when draft picks have more value. Because at that point they're solidified. You know what pick they are. Like that's gonna up the price on them a lot more. So I'm not saying that if the Patriots offered a first round pick, teams would be like, oh, we don't know where you're gonna finish, because that's different. I'm talking about more so like the second rounders, third rounders. At that point, it's like, okay, because the draft order changes too. Like I don't know if you guys remember, like last season or last offseason, the Patriots had the third overall pick, but in the second round they had the second pick because the command, like something because of the strength of schedule. I don't want to get all into it, but the draft picks subtle, like slightly change, and that matters. Like teams care if they're trading for the 34th pick as opposed to the 35th pick. Like that, as much as little of a difference as that is, teams care. So um, draft picks have a lot more value in the offseason. So I would say wait until the Patriots have those draft picks solidified, whether you're in the tank fan, like part of the fan base, that you want them to get the number one pick and everything. Um, that obviously that would help them as far as trades, but like what if they end up winning, 3 or 4 more games? Then things change as far as how valuable those picks are.
And obviously, everyone's talking about how T. Higgins is going to be a free agent this offseason. My only worry with not really making a significant move at the trade deadline, which they probably can't do in the first place, is just losing out on free agent talent like T. Higgins, even if you offer him a huge contract, just because of how the rest of the season plays out and just the record at the end of the year. Like, it's going to be hard to entice free agents to really come here. You can really only sell them on like Drake May,
Yeah,
if
that's it.
we're being completely honest. Like, that's just my only worry.
Yeah, yeah. I think in terms of T. Higgins, he's either signing a long-term contract, like it's going to go one of two ways. I genuinely don't think he's hitting free agency. So yes, I do think the Patriots have to trade for him at some point, but that moment in time is not right now. Um, I think he's going to get either a long-term contract or he's going to get franchise tagged again. And if he gets franchise tagged again, there's no way in hell he's staying in Cincinnati. Like he was already pissed about staying there in the first place on the franchise tag. They're going to trade him off of that franchise tag. It's smart for them to get a return for him as well. So I, we'll talk about compensation in the offseason when that whole situation does arise. But as of right now, just wrapping it all together, they're not going to add a like you. I think you put it perfectly. I was saying like number one receiver. You put it perfectly. They're not going to add a true difference maker in the middle of a season that clearly isn't going too well.
And I'm gonna gear away from like the trade deadline for just a second here. I wanted to ask you: you think T Higgins isn't gonna hit the open market? So then, how would you feel about giving a pretty decent contract to a guy like Chris Godwin?
So
I love Chris Godwin.
yeah,
I think
no,
that's
I agree. Like the thing with Chris Godwin is that I would have loved to say yes to that before his injury, because that injury, that dislocation, it messes up the flexibility in the ankle. I don't want to get all into the medical stuff. I watched a YouTube video on it, so I have no no like credentials behind what I'm saying. I watched like a doctor or whatever talk about it. He pretty much was saying that that injury causes like some sort of like stiffness in the ankle even after it heals. Um, and he was using like past data to say that like it causes like a dip in production. Um, Obviously, like even 80% of Chris Godwin is probably better than what we have right now. Like, no offense to the guys that we have on roster, but like, I just don't want to pay a guy that, what, I think he's like 28, 29, something like that. Like, I don't want to pay him something like that if he's not even going to be 100% anymore. Um, that's just my take on it. So if it was before the injury, yes, like 100%, I would love for them to target Chris Godwin instead. But I will say personally, I want them to get an X receiver. That's my thing.
yeah.
Like
I know who
I
you
don't think,
want.
yeah, yeah, I don't think Chris Godwin is an X. I think they need an X receiver, someone that's the alpha in the wide receiver room. That someone like a Tedero McMillan come draft it, draft time. But I that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. Um, but so moving on, I wanted to kind of talk about trade targets. If they were to buy, like what we talked about earlier, a guy on an expiring deal or a younger veteran guy, it doesn't really matter. A vet on a multi-year contract who can serve as a future piece to the defense or offense or
Yeah.
you name it. Um, Carlos, do you have anyone in mind that could be a trade target?
So I have two people in mind. I'll go with the first one. Spoiler alert: they're both on defense. So to the people that love the idea of them getting a receiver or a tackle, I I don't see I don't see them doing that, or I just don't expect them to. Um, as far as the two guys, I'll say the first one. I think it's Aziz Ojulari. He is running up his price. He's the Giants' edge rusher, for those who don't know. But he has 6 sacks on the season, and Kayvon Thibodeau is out for right now. So I do think his price has spiked up a little bit just because he's performing well, which for a trading team isn't a bad thing because you want a guy that's going to produce and someone that's on a hot streak, I guess you could say. But for the Patriots in particular, trading for a guy that might be raising his price may not be the best situation. Just in terms of positional need, though, and the fact that he's a young guy on an expiring contract and he's on a team that should be selling as well, I would love for them to trade for him. I genuinely think that he could, I don't want to even say be a difference maker, but just, and it sounds bad because they just traded away a guy that I'm saying they should fill the void of, but he would fill the void of Josh Uche. And on top of that, it just kind of gives some security because I would expect them to give him a contract after. Um, it would give them some security as in terms of the draft. They won't have to prioritize getting like an edge rusher like as a number one need because that's at the top of their list. So just getting a young guy in the building like that, get him under contract, someone that you know could produce. I know he's some injury concerns, but that's the one that I would love for them to trade for.
Yeah, I mean, he would be a big boost to the pass rush. And like you said, that kind of satisfies a need heading into the draft a little bit at edge because I feel like obviously the two glaring ones on offense, receiver, offensive tackle, and then like a edge rusher, defensive tackle. Those are like the big the big priorities heading
Yeah.
into the draft. As of now, obviously, free agency changes things. The rest of the season can change things. But yeah, I completely agree with you on that. He was actually my pick. But
Okay.
I also wouldn't mind seeing them inquiring about Colts linebacker EJ Speed. I feel like, especially with the absence of Juwan Bentley, he's not like he wouldn't be like a completely perfect fill in for Juwan, but I feel like he's got that sideline to sideline speed. He's able to cover a lot of ground, and I think he would really help in the run defense and also pass rush. He can pass rush pretty well as well. And I think that would lift some of the pressure off of Jelani Tavai's shoulders, but also wouldn't want them to give up too much if they were to like trade for him, just because I feel like Christian Ellis is really coming into his own right now.
Yeah.
And I think he can be a not a significant, somewhat significant factor, especially in the future. Yeah, that's my take on that. But I also wanted to ask you, you posted about a certain cornerback who was
Mhm.
taken a few picks before Mac Jones in 2020.
Yeah.
What was the hypothetical trade you put out? It was J.C. Horn for
I
what
put
were the Patriots sending back?
a 2026 second. So that one I derived completely just because people were talking about the Panthers being sellers, obviously at the trade deadline. They're the worst team in the NFL as of right now. Um,
As usual.
he's someone that could garner them a return. So that's why I was like thinking like why why not? Why wouldn't he maybe be a trade target? Look at Brian Burns, for example. He was always like rumored to be in trade discussions. I remember the Rams like offered them, I think it was like 2 or 3 first round picks for him, and they decided to decline it, and then they traded him to the Giants like a year later for much less. So they're a not so well run organization. Um, because of that, I was thinking like, getting a really really good young corner that's still under his rookie contract into next year, like that would be cool. But yeah, that was just a quick like little hypothetical that I was thinking about. Why not just throw it out there? You never know. But they shut that down. It was funny. The next day, the day right after I posted that, I don't know if they asked Dave Canales, the Panthers head coach, or if they asked their GM, but there was a report that got put out saying that he's one of the guys that they're not trading at all. Like they're not going to consider it. So that got shut down quickly. So um, just to segue into my second guy, it's actually a corner, a young corner. I really like the idea of them trading for Paulson Adebo from the Saints. I know he's not like a big name, but like we both said earlier, it's someone that is a depth piece that could be the corner like CB2, CB3. He's really good in zone, and they've been running a lot of zone this season. Um, he's on an expiring rookie contract. They'd have to give him a new contract, but just for a team like the Saints that is like in a weird limbo right now. He's also been struggling with injury, so maybe that lowers his price. Um, he's someone that I would really like for them to inquire about. I think that adding some sort of and I wouldn't consider him a veteran, but just someone that has experience in the league, playing too. Like he actually plays a lot for the Saints. I think that would be really cool to add add to the cornerback room because it's a lot of young guys that just don't have as much experience as a typical starting corner in the league.
Yeah, I think he would definitely add some reliable depth because I mean, after you got Gonzo, the Joneses, and then after that, it's Marco Wilson, it's Isaiah Bolden. They're
Mhm.
all young, a little inexperienced. Not uh, Marco Wilson, not as much as Isaiah
Yeah.
Bolden, but still, they're not completely reliable, and I think that would
Mhm.
definitely help with that. And then I also wanted to briefly talk about me and Zach briefly talked about this for a bit. It was I know he said we don't really see him making like a move at wide receiver unless it's like trading away KJ Osborne or Taquan Thornton.
Yeah.
But how would you feel about bringing in a vet on a multi-year deal like Cortland Sutton or dare I say it, Jacoby Myers?
The Jacoby one, I don't see that happening. I see the logic in that, obviously, but the Jacoby one, I don't see happening. Cortland Sutton's an interesting one. The only thing about him is that I don't see him getting traded. I know people have been like floating the idea around that he's going to get traded. I just don't expect him to get traded. He's with a rookie QB that's performing relatively well. So to take away like a veteran presence, and he's like a big veteran, like locker room presence as well. So as much as I would love for the Patriots to think about trading for him or even inquire about it. Um, I think, yeah, we kind of spoke about it a little bit earlier. Like, I don't see them making one of those additions during like the middle of the season. I could totally see him getting traded in the offseason and for the Patriots to inquire about it in the offseason. But putting him in this situation right now, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you on that. I threw out Jacoby Myers just for the hell of it. I thought that was fun to do. But I think Cortland Sutton you can genuinely make an argument for, but
Yeah,
I really can't see them moving off of him, especially since the Broncos are in the playoff picture right now, as it
yeah,
stands,
exactly.
and they've been a really solid team. And I think um, in that not an experienced but young wide receiver room, they want Cortland Sutton there. And
Mhm.
I agree with you that I don't think they're going to be very willing to move off of a guy like that. That is going to be that veteran presence in the locker room and assure these young guys. And just it's great to have guys like that.
Yeah.
Like we were just talking about with
Like
Kendrick
Kendrick
Bourne.
Bourne. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like I don't want to say he's their version of Kendrick Bourne, that's different, but that presence, that leadership that he provides is very important. I did want to ask you though, if like we don't need to put a player to the question, but who or what position would you want them to add to by like that's your number one position that you wish that they added to? Like I said, you don't need to name a player. It could be offense or defense. What position do you wish that they would supplement before the trade deadline?
It's gonna have to be on the defensive side of the ball for me.
All right.
I know you mentioned Ojulari. I think an edge rusher could
Mhm.
definitely help them. Also, a defensive tackle up front, primarily like a run stopper. Honestly, the run stopper or pass rusher, aside from last week, they've really struggled to contain quarterbacks in the pocket and preventing them from extending plays, using their legs, scrambling outside the pocket, throwing downfield. I mean,
Mhm.
that was a big issue against the Jets in week 3, against the 49ers in week 4. And I think that they might need some help there. They're going to need some help there definitely in the future. Come the offseason, they need to address that issue. But I mean, if you can get a veteran for cheap, why not do it now?
Yeah.
And
No,
then
I
also
agree.
like cornerback depth, like you mentioned.
Yeah,
But it
as
definitely be
surprising
on
as
the
it might sound. Go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead. No, I just said it's definitely gonna have to be on the defensive side of the ball. I
Yeah.
know people don't want to hear that just because the offense, but
Yeah.
it's hard to trade for us. You're gonna have to give up a decent amount of draft capital for, yeah,
Mhm.
a decent amount of draft capital for a starting caliber like offensive tackle,
Yeah.
and also the receiver room is just super crowded.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. I was just gonna say, like, I know a lot of people are gonna be surprised that we're saying add to the defense rather than the offense. I know I genuinely don't like this is you can tell how much it bothers me. I genuinely don't understand where the narrative comes from that you could just trade for a starting offensive tackle, or you could sign a starting offensive tackle that's going to be like absolutely elite. That doesn't happen.
Hasn't. It
That doesn't
hasn't.
happen.
That's where it's coming
It
from.
it's literally draft. Like it's the draft. That's where you get those guys. People are going to point to Trent Williams. He was a very, very like particular case of the team. I'll literally say like they literally identified that he had cancer. They downplayed it, and then when he finally found out that it genuinely was cancer, he told them to trade him. That's what happened with him. Like the best offensive tackle in the league. That's why he got traded. So I don't want people to just think that like, oh, this team's struggling, then we'll just try to trade for their starting tackle. That doesn't happen. The only tackle that I could genuinely think of that might have that potential to grow as a starter that might be in trade talks. I don't think he is, but like I wouldn't be shocked if out of nowhere he got traded. Is Evan Neal from the Giants?
Yeah.
He's the one person that comes to mind in the entire league that has like starter potential, but just hasn't broken through yet. And they could be he could be a complete bust, and the Patriots trade for him, and then people are mad that they wasted draft capital on trading for him. So he's the only guy that comes to mind that could be in potential trade talks, um, that could provide people that that or feed into the narrative that like, oh, you could trade for a starting tackle. And he's the only guy that comes to mind.
Yeah. Then also, or before I ask you this question, if anyone watching has any questions, send them in. We'd be more than happy to answer them. But I also put out a tweet like an hour before we went live, asking for just players that our followers want to hear us talk about, and it was Jordan Addison. We already talked about him. Veteran wide receiver and Darius Slayton. Already talked about that group, that bunch there. Unless you want to add to that.
Um, I only made
You
that
don't have
face
to.
to
It's
the.
just
No, I made that face to the Darius Slayton one just because why? Like like what is he going to really provide? Like I mentioned it earlier,
oh,
like
thank you.
they don't need to trade for more twos, threes. Like they need a difference maker. I don't see why they would trade for him. The Jordan Addison one we talked about, but yeah, the Darius Slayton one's kind of I don't see why.
And then the one that was a little enticing, Buda Baker. It was I don't have it pulled up, but or I have it pulled up in a separate tab. But Buda Baker, with questions surrounding Pepper's future, Baker might be a solid find for cheap due to him being in the final year of his contract. I don't see him being very cheap,
Mm-mm.
uh, even in the final year of his contract. The Cardinals love him, and he's a really good player. He's going to be a very expensive player, and I don't see the point in giving up some really significant draft capital for a guy like him. Obviously, we still have to, like you mentioned, we still have to see if Peppers is going to come back. But also, I feel like the safety group is really fine as is.
They just drafted a third
Like
round safety last year, so
Yeah, Martin Mapu's been all over
mhm.
the field. He's been great. You still have Kyle Duggar, who's able to kind of like play back in his normal spot in these recent
Mhm.
weeks, where he really excelled in the past. And then Jalen Hawkins, he's been great. And also, don't count out Brendan Schooler as well. And don't count out Del Pettis, the
Yeah.
undrafted safety from Troy. He's been filling in really well too. And that's
Mhm.
five really solid or good players. Like
Yeah.
I don't see the point in giving up significant draft capital when you have depth there. Most definitely the spot on defense. They have the most depth and the most reliable pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's on top of that, he's somebody that it's like, why would they trade for him in the middle of a season that they know they're not going to compete? That just makes no sense to trade for a veteran that's on an expiring deal that's probably looking to win, and you trade him to one of the bottom three teams in the league. That I don't see why that would happen. On top of that, you're playing like a very dangerous game there because I know the Jabril Pepper situation isn't supposed to be figured out until after the trade deadline. So if you trade for a safety like that, you sign him to a long term deal, and then Jabril Peppers gets cleared and he comes back, it's like you have three safeties that you're paying a lot of money to. So that's just that's just one of those positions that if something happens with Peppers that he's no longer going to play in the NFL, at that point you just either address it in free agency or you do it in the draft. Like there's no need to trade for someone when we mentioned they have Kyle Duggar, Marde Mapu, they have Del Pettis as well. Like that's just something that doesn't necessarily need a lot of compensation allocated to.
I don't know. Brendan Schooler is primarily special teamer, but they re-signed him to a
Yeah,
multi-year deal. Um, and also, you mentioned like they can reassess it in free agency, but I honestly feel like the safety move this offseason, primarily in free agency, is you re-sign Jalen Hawkins. I think he's on a 1 year deal. I,
I would. He is on a 1 year deal. I will say, like my number one like wish for the safety room in particular. Even and I know I'm like literally like counteracting exactly what I just said, but I would love if they added Javon Holland. I don't think he's gonna hit free agency, but if they get Javon Holland as their free safety, that would I would absolutely love that. I would love if they got Javon Holland, but I know that's completely going against what I just said about them having three high paid safeties. That's why it's just a wish. It's just a fantasy of mine. But if the Peppers thing doesn't go their way and they lose one of their safeties, at that point, sure I could see that becoming like a realistic option. So
yeah,
that's just one to keep in mind if when the offseason comes around if he does hit free agency.
yeah, definitely. But if anyone doesn't have any last questions, that might do
Keegan's
it
been
for us.
begging us to talk about Adonai Mitchell, and
Oh,
he's been
yeah.
he's been
Okay, let me
he's
pull
been
that up.
he's brought up Adonai Mitchell like 2 or 3 times
I
now.
had it pulled up and I was going to talk about it, and then I just completely forgot about it because we were rambling about Jalen Hawkins and Javon
Yeah.
Holland. So, Keegan,
What do you
what do
your
you
thoughts?
think about huh? What?
I said you want to give your thoughts on Adonai Mitchell? I don't know. I don't really have many thoughts.
Um, I really liked him coming out of the draft. He was my personal wide receiver four. I think I liked him slightly better than Brian Thomas Jr. That looks bad now, but BTJ was still my wide receiver five. But I really liked him coming out of the draft. I was really hoping that they would pick him in the second round. I was fine with the Polk pick. I still think it's gonna be fine. I hope. But I mean, in terms of like the trade deadline, I don't see the Colts getting rid of him at all, really.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, they just spent a second round pick on him. I can't see them trading him for like a second this year. I don't know. They aren't going to trade him. That's
Yeah.
all I'm trying to say.
If there's
Yeah.
one person, if we're talking about Colts wide receivers, if there's one guy I could see becoming a potential trade target come the offseason, not right now, it's Michael Pittman. And the only reason I'm saying that is because maybe they see something in Adonai Mitchell that they're like, you know what? This is who we want as our X receiver. This is who we want as our star receiver. They have Alec Pierce and they have Josh Downs as well. I could totally see them making him available in trade talks. I know he just signed an extension, but that's like a possible trade target for the Patriots come the offseason. That's considering the fact that maybe they just completely blow the rest of the season and they just want to blow up the receiver room or do something drastic. I know they just made a drastic move by benching their top draft pick, but um, besides that, yeah, that's the one guy from the Colts receiver room that I could see becoming a potential trade target for the Patriots in particular.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't see it happening just
Hmm.
because I think the issue with Pittman kind of playing below his typical standard of play this season, I think it has a lot to do with Anthony Richardson and the offense that they run with Richardson under center. I think he's still a great wide receiver talent. It's just been a rough year
Mhm.
externally for him. Um, in terms of the other play on the field. I mean, he evidently plays better when Joe Flacco's in there. I will say that.
Everybody does, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, everybody does. Yeah, Anthony Richardson. That's a rough start to the season.
Listen, I wanted to make this quick point. We could wrap up on this if you want. The one thing that genuinely makes me feel good about the quarterback situation for the Patriots is that I have not watched Drake. I know he's only played 2.5 games. I get that. But I have not watched a single moment of Drake May that I'm like, oh gosh, I have doubts about this guy, that he might not work out. Think about what Colts fans are going through right now. That's their Drake May. Like that's their Drake May, and they have so many. They've had doubts from the beginning, and now he's benched already. Like I think it's like 10 games into his career or something like that, or maybe even less. Um, that's crazy to think, and we should honestly be lucky that we have Drake May, because I don't maybe it's just me personally, but I've never had a moment that I'm like I doubt that this guy's going to work out, or that's worrisome in a way. I've never had that feeling with just watching him play in those 2.5 games.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that. I was actually thinking about this earlier today. I was just thinking about how good it feels to have Drake May on the team right now.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking back to like the Mac Jones days.
Yeah.
Not to diminish his play from his rookie year, because he did have a really good rookie year. But like it was more like it took longer for me to be like, okay, maybe we got something with him. Like even when he almost beat the Tom Brady Bucks in week 4, I was still like, okay, give it a little longer. But like against the Texans, obviously it was a really rough start, but he got better as the game went on. He threw an absolute dot to Kayshon Boutte. Like he looked so good, and he still looks so good. And I'm really gonna be sad if I can't see him play next week. But it's more than likely he won't, I think. But still, Jacoby Brissett, when he's a backup, he's so much better.
See, that's someone that when you watch on the field, you have doubts. Just gonna put that out there. Like that's like when he went in the game for Drake May, I was like, don't make that throw, or like just just please play it safe. But when Drake May's in there, or I'll even go back to like how you said the Mac Jones, like that era, there were so many times that it was in the middle of a game. I'm like, please, like just play it safe. Like don't make a dumb mistake, or like I just felt like I couldn't trust him to do the right thing. And I know that sounds really messed up, but that's genuinely how I felt watching him sometimes. So with Drake May, Patriots fans rejoice. We might have a legit franchise QB again. So
I think we do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump again. I think we do.
Okay. I won't say
I
just
think
yet.
this offseason they need the Patriots, they need to really start investing in that rookie contract. They need to start spending that $130 million that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm personally, for me, I'm giving Elliott Wolf a pass from last year's free agency, just because, like specifically like offensive tackle and receiver, there weren't really many great options. They tried to get Calvin Ridley. They tried to get Brandon Ayuk, but they just didn't want to come here because of what the team has been the last couple of years. But I mean, this is the year I think you really got to start investing heavy. You got to start dishing out some. I think that does it. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. We had a great time talking past trade deadline with you guys, giving our thoughts on who we think they should trade, who they should trade for, and so on. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Won't let you guys when we go live again. Thank you guys.
Thank you.